Never miss our updates and be part of our conversation squad.
I personally also, as I said earlier, I wanted to come physically in the physical mode, but it could not materialize. Last year, it was my mother's health. This year, it is my health. But anyway, that's a promise that we'll meet soon in Hyderabad. And that soon will be soon. Uh, I think uh, where I had left, in fact, before informally I started, that this verdict of 2024 has to be read, understood by everyone, the common citizens of this country, the party which has formed the government, as well as the party which failed to form the government. Also, it has to be understood by parties, whether they are in the India bloc or in the NDA bloc, or even those who actually are not able to decide where do they belong to. So, on the whole, if you will look at this verdict is for everyone to, there is something as a kind of takeaway for everyone. Now, before I talk about 2024, let's quickly, I think all of us can travel through the verdict of 2014 as well as the verdict of 2019. 2014 was an election in the backdrop of UPA 2's a kind of narrative which was in the media that there is policy paralysis, there is widespread corruption, there were movements on the streets, particularly in Delhi and some of the metropolitan centers. So the narrative actually was not built by the party which won the election in 2014, but by the civil society. So 2014, I would consider as a kind of election driven by the civil society and the civil society movement. So we had a government under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji from 14 to 19. 2019, 18, I came to the parliament. And I can vouch for the fact, I can tell you that 2019 in the month of January, we had a brief session of the parliament. And none of the BJP members were very sure or 100% sure of re-election. I'm talking about individual MPs. Then we know what all happened. Pulwama happened. Balakot happened. And a lot has been spoken by Satpal Malik ji, the then governor of Jammu and Kashmir. So 2019 election, in a long interview to Daily Telegraph, I said from Calcutta, I said it was not an election. It was a kind of tribute to our martyrs. Two elections in the memory of this nation, I find, they were not ordinary general election. The one which followed the assassination of Indira ji and the one which followed Pulwama and Balakot in 2019. They were not a mandate-based election. They had a different story to tell. And the story lied in martyrdom, in case of Indira ji, martyrdom of Indira ji, and in case of 2019, martyrdom of Jawans in Pulwama. So let's now come back to 2024. 2024 election, because I as an insider, I can share with you, large number of people thought it's an uneven election. BJP with its slogan and trumpeting by almost all media houses, ab ki baar 400 par. Nobody can stop us below 400. So this message, I mean, this was hardly a kind of slogan. It was perceived as a reality of tomorrow, as a reality which is going to happen on 4th of June. Meanwhile, correct me if I'm wrong with the date. On 22nd January, Ram Mandir was inaugurated. And this inauguration had a different kind of impact on different people. In Bihar, Nitish ji thought the election is meaningless. Everybody will do Ram, 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 Ram. And we have lost the election. Then he decided to switch sides and he left our alliance. The one who was instrumental in making India alliance moved to the other side. Now, as the election progressed, and I would tell you that ab ki baar 400 par, we are going to cross 400. We had not imagined it will be perceived by the common citizen of this country as a kind of initiative from BJP, which threatens the common citizens, particularly with regard to constitution-based government. We didn't do much about it. Let me tell you, any political party. Suddenly, people realized after the first page, mark my words, after the first page, because till first page, we didn't know what this election is going to mean to us. Many of us believe that the outcome is actually certain. BJP is going to win handsomely. If not 400, 398. After first page, we realized that the game is on. People are fighting this election. And whether it is, many of you would remember 77 election. When Indira ji called for election after emergency, she was also very sure that she is going to win these many number of seats. But 77 election, when the outcomes came, it startled everybody, surprised everybody, even Janata Party leaders. Some of those who were in jail, they didn't know that this is going to happen. These results will come this way. So, when the counting happened on 4th of June, we suddenly saw that the party which went with the slogan of ab ki baar 400 par. And during the course of the election, I think more than anybody, probably the Prime Minister knew the real pulse of the country. He knew 400 is not going to happen. So midway during the election, you find an unprecedented kind of attempt for polarization. In independent India's history, since our first election in 1952, we never heard any Prime Minister using the word Muslims, that they'll take away this and give it to Muslims. There were lies and blatant lies. For instance, I'll tell you, in Mandal Commission for OBC reservation, there is reservation for Muslims. And that reservation is not based on religion. That reservation is based on the premises of Article 15.4 and Article 16.4, which talks about social and educational backwardness. His party chose to ignore this fundamental feature of our constitution. And blatant lies were produced in the public domain that Muslims are getting reservation. Under Mandal Commission, Muslims are getting reservation, not because of their religious affiliation, but on account of social and educational backwardness. The Honorable Prime Minister never emphasized on social and educational backwardness. Now, this was one. Then you have another polarizing issue, and that was Bhais. If you have two buffaloes, he'll take Congress and opposition will take away one. your Mangal Sutras shall be snatched. Then in Bihar, addressing my leader, my party leader, Tejaswi and Laluji, he said that all these people will do mujra. The choice of words and epithets, if you look at it, targeting Akhilesh ji in UP, he said, they'll take away your water taps, tonti, they'll cut your electricity. All these attempts were on brazen polarization. We were scared, I must tell you, we were scared. How shall it impact the election outcome? Because we have seen around us the kind of poison which is being spread for the last 10 years. A particular community rightly feels disenfranchised. So we were worried, I must admit. We were worried about the outcome of the election. Now what happens? When the counting takes place on 4th of June, we were surprised by the sheer number we had reached, by the fact that this election, which was considered to be one-sided, had suddenly become very interesting, by the fact that the party which claimed 400 seats, 350 on its own, was close to 238, 239, 240. The Prime Minister trailed, he himself trailed in the initial 2 rounds or 3 rounds. All these things were a kind of signal that probably Indian electorate is smarter than political parties think of them. Indian electorate values more than anything else, it values the constitutional propriety, constitutional morality, constitutional principles. We may not be aware that how constitution is perceived by large number of people in the countryside, in the rural hinterland. But you know, the message had gone. Why do they need a number which defies logic? 400. Now, under these circumstances, I think all of us must view 2024 election outcome and the message. At the onset, let me tell you, the message is not only for the BJP, the ruling party. The message is also for us. Many of our friends don't think that there is a message for us. I'll begin with what is the message for the opposition. For the opposition, the message is, don't just show this book in public rallies, the book called Indian Constitution. Live by it. Live with it. Now, when I say live by it and live with it, what does it mean? It means that there are certain core principles around which our politics should happen or mobilization should take place. Dignity, freedom, justice, equality. It can't be that in our approach we don't practice equality, but in election time, we refer to equality. We refer to justice. Justice, equality, freedom, dignity. These are the kind of I would say values which demand 24/7 engagement. Engagement in our politics, in our manifesto, in our commitment, not only in words. So the message is to us that what we have done, what you have done so far is not enough. Because if you look at it, before the election for, I would say, technically for 3.5 years, the opposition was not to the extent we would expect or you would expect that the opposition should be on the street. The opposition, I mean, when I say opposition, it is constructive opposition. If there are issues, it needs to be highlighted. They need to be highlighted. It should be highlighted within the house, I mean the parliament. as well as on the streets. So technically, after 2019 election, there was a massive period of low in the opposition camp. We got up, I think, by the end of 2022, maybe a year before the elections were to take place in 2024. This is the message for the opposition, whether in Andhra or in Bihar or in Uttar Pradesh or in Karnataka or in Tamil Nadu, every state and union territory, the message for the opposition is that mobilize around people's issues. Provide support to the government where needed. Expose the government where they need a wake-up call. For the party in power, which has cobbled together, or I would say, which has a managed majority, which has a managed mandate, which is not natural. Because I remember the kind of relationship was there between Chandrababu Naidu of TDP and the BJP. Chandrababu Naidu has worked with us. I have personally worked with him during 2019 elections. Or for that matter, Nitish Babu, who left us on the eve of the election. The message is for everyone, including the BJP. So in 10-15 minutes, I'll quickly sum up through certain categories that what is the message of this mandate. There is a social message. I mean, these categories have an overlap. They are not watertight compartment. There is a social message. This nation in last 10 years in particular, I won't say much. There was a rosy or a very positive period before that. But in the last 10 years, the society has suffered in terms of polarization. The society has suffered in terms of discrimination, whether it is against the minorities, particularly Muslims, the Sikhs, or the Dalits. This, I would say, the poisonous atmosphere, the spread of poison, which is on a regular basis in last 10 years, through different kind of mechanism, including dog whistle politics, in which some of my friends in the BJP, some of the top ministers, they specialize in dog whistle politics. The message of the mandate is stop this dog whistle politics. Stop polarization. Stop playing with history. Counterfactual imagination has replaced history. Message is stop counterfactual imagination. Don't imagine that if Caesar had not crossed Rubicon, what would have happened? The fact of the matter is Caesar crossed Rubicon. Deal with that. You can't have your narrative always built around an Aurangzeb or a Babur. The Muslims of today have nothing to do with that. But you make them suffer. And that's what I say, that the social message of this mandate is very clear. People celebrated the inauguration of Ram Temple, yet the same people didn't like the way you tried to hijack that entire event. And then you have that Ayodhya result. And all adjoining seats around Ayodhya. So the social message is, I repeat, there should be complete prohibition on dog whistle politics, on polarization. People of India will not accept it. Second is the constitutional message. You know, I said in my opening lines that when we carried this book and argued that the constitution is under threat, we never realized this will have a traction, such a massive traction. After the first phase, we started getting message from the ground because we have a feedback mechanism. Started getting the message from the ground that actually it has percolated down to the people that constitution is not safe under their leadership. People are worried about reservation. People are worried about issues of dignity. People are worried about issues of justice. People are worried about issues of fraternity. People are worried about issues relating to concerns relating to freedom. We didn't do much. I'll not give undue credit to the opposition parties. The common citizens of this country, the voters of this country, picked it up through their own intelligence, through their own insight, and as a result of which, there is a message through the constitutional premises for the ruling party that you cannot replace this book with whimsical ideas. During the election, if you remember, and that is also carried in the budget, unfortunately, I know only one caste. The caste is poor. It sounds good. It sounds good, but it is not the reality. If we look at the caste hierarchy, why the concentration of poverty, vulnerability, powerlessness increases as you go down the caste ladder? And why it decreases substantially as you go up the caste ladder? Then you have the audacity to say there is only one caste, and that is poor, that is poverty. Poverty has no caste. All this is meaningless. Read through the Constitution. It defines everything. Article 14, Article 15, Article 16. So this message. Then there is a message about the autonomy and independence of institutions, judiciary, executive, legislature, and the media. Now, there is excessive executive overreach, I would say, in institutions which were supposed to be independent, whether it is IT, CBI, income tax, their independence has been compromised. There are voices, if there is one judicial pronouncement which is not soothing to the ears of the government, they make mockery of judiciary as well. Now, on legislature, I don't have to say anything. When you pass a bill within a span of 5 minutes or 7 minutes, it speaks volumes about the kind of respect you accord to legislature. So the message from the electorate, the constitutional message was that go by the rule book, respect the ideas enshrined in the Constitution, beginning with the first page, that is the preamble of the Constitution, and move on. That's the second message. I don't know how much of these, and I'll come to it a little later. Then there is a political message. And the political message, I would just say in one line and then elaborate if needed. Now, the idea of collective is core to our democracy. It cannot be subverted by the whimsical ideas of a megalomaniac kind of politics. A kind of politics which cannot look beyond I, me, and mine. The idea of collective is actually the spirit of our democracy seen through our Constitution. That's why there is no position of Prime Minister in our Constitution. He is the first among the equals. He heads the cabinet. We don't choose our Prime Minister. We choose members of Parliament. That's the idea of collective. And then the members of the Parliament choose a leader. However, interestingly, this time the BJP did not choose its leader. The NDA chose its leader, and there is no meeting of BJP, parliamentary party, to elect Mr. Modi as their leader. So, political message is to bring back the collective. Now, when we say coalition, I personally believe that in a country like India, if its diversity has to be respected, loved, admired, or adored, you need coalition politics. Coalition is actually, if you look at the makeup of this nation, the makeup of this nation is based on coalition. Coalition of regions, coalition of ideas, coalition of religion, coalition of faith, coalition of belief, coalition of food, coalition of dress, and so on and so forth. So the coalition government is supposed to respect the diversity. It has to move beyond my way or highway. Now, with these coalition partners, I have a strong sense that Manipur shall be addressed. These two coalition partners might provide a kind of insight, because coalition is all about adjustment. It's all about listening. This government in last 10 years had sacrificed the art of listening, had sacrificed the art of conversation. So I believe very strongly that the political message is respect the diversity of ideas, of different states, their needs, their aspirations. And that's why, happily so, it's soothing to the ears and beautiful to the eyes that Mr. Prime Minister does not talk about Modi government. He says NDA government. I have said it in the parliament कि हमारे कान तरस गए थे ये सुनने को कि एनडीए गवर्नमेंट, मोदी गवर्नमेंट नहीं. Now this is the third message. The next message in the realm of economics, I'll tell you, which to a little extent the budget has tried to make it up. We are in the worst phase of unemployment situation in India. What the country needed was a kind of blueprint which addresses this precarious situation. Agniveer, 4-year tenure in army, nobody liked it. I mean, the other day, Mr. Prime Minister said that we are misleading the people. I think he doesn't know that the youth which is preparing for the army, they want a full tenure. No opposition party has the guts or they can be audacious enough to mislead the youth. It is they who provided us the insight that please fight for us. Now, instead of addressing that, Mr. Prime Minister is trying to stonewall it. He's asking CISF, CRPF, different states, 10% reservation here, 10% reservation there. That doesn't work. Second, on the farmers' issues, the legal guarantee to MSP, this has been spoken through the mandate. So what I mean, that if you look at the economic messaging, it is very clear that they won't. There is a section in Article 39 of Indian Constitution, subclause C, which says that huge concentration of wealth should be avoided because that leads to income inequality. On income inequality, we have Oxfam report. I have shared in the parliament, large number of my colleagues have shared it. I know some of the top BJP leaders. They told us, you are absolutely right. No nation can be comfortable with these kind of income inequality images. The government has been given a message. The party has been given a message by the people of this country. This huge concentration of wealth, which is considered obnoxious by Article 39, Clause C. We have recently seen a wedding which I consider obscene. Now, I mean, you are rich. You are rich. But our constitution believes that if richness is grabbed through unethical, illegal means, this becomes obscene. And then you display that obscenity 24/7 by the media you control. The message from the electorate was on this obscene richness also, on brazen and poor images of income inequality. This message is very clear. And the last but not the least, I'll tell you, it is a psychological message. The people of this country thought this party under the leadership of so and so is invincible. This brand Modi cannot be dented. His image has been dented. Invincibility factor has gone. And that's good for democracy. I'm not saying this because I'm opposed to his politics. No person, Mrs. Indira Gandhi had developed this belief that she is invincible. Mr. Modi has developed this belief he is invincible. Mrs. Indira Gandhi was taught by 77. Mr. Modi has been taught by 2024. Mrs. Indira Gandhi learned her lesson. Mr. Modi need to learn. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vikramji and everybody at Manthan.
Thank you, Professor Manoj Jha. That was really a fascinating speech. I'm calling it a speech, it's a talk, but I say speech because we have heard you so often in Parliament and we have been hugely impressed with your interventions. And that's why we were very keen to have you at Manthan. If I can start with a question, you have outlined the 5 messages, if I'm not mistaken: the social,
Yes.
questions of accountability, economic, political, and lastly, psychological.
Yes.
Could I, this is not perhaps the most important message from your talk, but in the 6 weeks that since the election, you say that the budget, for example, reflects in some small measure that the message has gone home. But overall, do you see a change in the psychological aspect, as you say, that do we have to change? Are we going to see the ruling coalition change? Are we going to see continued pressure from the opposition party to make the ruling coalition change? So it's too early, it's just 6 weeks. But after the initial shock, do you see some of the changes that some of the messages that you are saying should be learned to begin with by the ruling coalition?
You're very right. I would say yes and no. Message has reached. I know that because large number of BJP people also. This mandate, I forgot to add, it has given a breathing space to everyone, to the ordinary citizens of this country, to the parties in opposition, and to members of BJP also, because they can breathe. You can see the other day, one of their cabinet colleague, Anupriya Patel, gave an interview to Indian Express and said that the way Mr. Modi now talks had changed for the better. The way he used to talk earlier. Anyway, that's at a different level. But I tell you, there is a kind of denial, particularly by the Prime Minister and one or two of his colleagues. They wish to convey that this mandate doesn't mean much. Denial sometimes is used as a kind of ornament which you wear. Now, I see the possibility of change, but I'll tell you something. Even in the worst of marriages, most mismatched marriages, in the initial 6-8 weeks, you don't see the signals of divorce. So a lot depends on how people say look at regional aspirations. We are facing some of the critical issues, but I would say that the breathing space is so powerful that the government shall have difficulty. Otherwise, did you ever notice Mr. Prime Minister coming out of the parliament and saying कि 2.5 घंटे तक हमारा गला दबा के रखा? I am not playing the victim card. I mean, that's what I say. This message, these are the messages which are reaching, but the top two leaders are in a denial mode, and I think they'll have to jettison their denial mode sooner than later. Thank you, sir.
You're muted, Vikram.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Manoj, for that elaborate answer. But I have a question. All said and done, BJP has a majority, and they have been voted in full in some states like Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan and Gujarat. So, how do you say that there's a change happening when large sections of the society are still voting there? And don't you think that they actually represent the majority of the nation?
No, you are absolutely right. If you look at in terms of numbers, let me first make a small submission. Rajasthan cannot be clubbed with Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. Rajasthan, they have lost significant number of seats. Yes. Close to 11 seats they have lost. Gujarat, we were not even expecting 1 seat. Congress has won 1 seat. Madhya Pradesh, you know, there are two aspects to a majority. One is legislative majority, another is moral majority. They have lost the moral majority. Legislative majority, I have been listing that this country has changed in many ways. But the fact is, those changes are being revised now. For instance, polarization has impacted every section of this society, of our society. But polarization has reached threshold. That's why in several states, polarization did not work. But in some states, it did work. That's why I said the message is for everyone. The message is for the Congress also. Because the states which you have mentioned, Congress is on 101 fight. Whether it is Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, no regional players are there. So I think, and probably, I mean, Rahul ji and the Kharge Sahab, the entire Congress understands it better, that they have a huge task cut out for them. But I'll distinguish between legislative majority and a moral majority.
I also wanted to ask you this, sorry, Bharat. I also want to ask you because the influence of money in today's elections, I think the strategy of choking out money has worked for them at one level. What do you say about that? And generally, that it will ever come down, the influence of money in politics.
Vikramji, frankly speaking, there was a time when my party wanted me to contest this Lok Sabha election. I refused. I cannot contest. I'm a university teacher. I'm in Rajya Sabha. I cannot imagine contesting. You know, one thing which should worry everyone, people like you, ordinary citizens of this country, that it has become such a huge ticket kind of election. I mean, global capital is controlling our democracy. And it does not differentiate between political parties. I think except for a few exceptions by the people who have won through crowdfunding, rest of them, ask them, all of them would tell you that they fought within 75 lakh, which is the upper limit in a parliamentary election. You can't address one constituency, assembly constituency. And in parliamentary election, there are 6 to 7 assembly constituencies. So one thing which every political party is in a denial, that our politics is under the severe grip of money. The ones who have money bags, they can be sure of contesting an election. That's why somebody would say that he was such a great orator, he was such a great understanding, he knew so much, he cares for people so much, yet he lost. He lost not because of the merit he didn't have, but because of these kind of factors. And I must also tell you that this present BJP has made the elections costlier. In the sense, look at the electoral bond issue and the connection between people who gave electoral bonds and got contractual assignments. If this happens on a large scale, it's very difficult to make a small inroad in the political arena.
There's a question from the audience, Professor Jha. One is saying, do you think this government will last for 5 years? And if Nitish and Naidu switch sides, will the NDA alliance form a government and will that last full time? Because they know the picture somewhat better now in terms of people's priorities.
Thank you. I don't wish to sound like an astrologer that whether this government, there are contradictions, and a marriage based on contradictions generally don't last long. There could be a situation that living together separately, in the sense that you don't share the house, but you are not divorced. So I would not like to predict, but I don't see a longevity of this government. And if this government continues with these kind of contradictions, it makes the task of ordinary citizens or common people or opposition rather easy. Because this message from this mandate is that if the politics is not pro-people, that politics is not needed. It is 240 today. It could be further down to 140 or maybe less. Yes, Chandra Babu and Nitish ji. I have worked with both of them. For Chandra Babu ji, it is all about Andhra. And the day he feels that things are not going the way he wants, Amravati is his project. He got funds for Amravati, but politics won't stop at Amravati. Politics shall continue beyond Amravati. So let's see how things unfold. And I said earlier that even in the worst of marriages, you don't see signals of divorce in the initial 25, 26, 30 weeks. Thank you. Yes, but if India government is able to form a majority, we know the pulse of the people. It shall be a wholesome revision of the priorities. And that is what is needed in terms of economic priorities, in terms of socio-cultural ethos, in terms of rule of law and constitutional propriety or morality. That's all.
Can I expand on the last comment that you made and ask a question? There is this fear that the BJP government showed how to subvert constitution, how to subvert institutions, how to control the media, how to bring the police to heel. That whoever comes to power next would love to use those same approach, follow the same approach. And therefore, the damage that has been done is not something that can be easily rolled back.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I won't dispute it. I have been saying this, and I repeat, it is easy to win election because elections are arithmetic. But the kind of damage which has been done to the idea of India, to some of the core values which we held dear, I think election victory alone shall not help in that. There is a repair work required, which probably would take decades. There is healing required, which will probably take decades. But let's hope it happens.
Talking about the compromise to the institutions, there's a question here. What do you think about the reports that the Election Commission helped manipulate in about 80 seats? Actually, I have a wider question. I'm sure that all of us are in this conversation, we think that maybe election commission will compromise. But I think the election conduct of the elections is different from the results of the elections. Do you think, are you trusting the EVMs?
Look, EVM issue, I have a simple solution. I don't know why Election Commission is adamant. I am not against EVM, but large number of us believe what stops you in counting VVPAT, 100% counting. Just count VVPAT. You would say it will take time. Now you have currency counting machines. You can have a machine and it will give you a result within seconds. So the doubts on EVM could be taken care of by agreeing to 100% VVPAT counting. Number one. Number two, about Election Commission. In my last speech, I had said that I'm worried about the credibility of the Election Commission. You know, in the first phase, I complained. I mean, if I could share with you, hundreds of complaints were made by me and different other political parties. We didn't get any response. Any response. After the counting was done, I received an email. Please send further details of yours. Your name, your constituency. What for? My complaint was on the first page that Prime Minister's photograph was being shown, that he is the one who is bringing Lord Ram with the image, which was blatantly against the very idea of free and fair election, against the idea of polarizing techniques. So I believe Election Commission. Now, last time, Mr. Prime Minister and his party changed the way Election commissioners are appointed. Unless you have full independence to the Election Commission, where executives should have no role, you will have, because, you know, it's not a TN session kind of situation here. You have election commissioners who openly said that we deliberately left Prime Minister and some of the other top leaders from this. That's where the credibility of Election Commission is doubtful. And when the Election Commission is doubtful, the very idea of commission is doubtful. Every action of theirs is doubtful. So the question, 79, 80 seats, I mean, this is circulating. It's a serious issue. I personally know in the Bihar Assembly election, postal ballots, we lost because postal ballots were rejected in large numbers. We lost 10 to 12 seats with the 13 votes, 150, 250, 1100, because we were leading in the postal ballot section. So these are the kind of issues I think political parties collectively and the civil society, because the idea of free and fair election is the idea without which democracy cannot survive. It will die. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. There are a couple of more questions if you have the time, Professor Jha, if you could take them. Yeah. One is, it's not a question that can be answered in a short while, but because you are an RJD member and a spokesman, there's a question says, what do you feel about the RJD's own parliamentary election results?
Very right. I agree. If you look at it, we were in coalition. A party which was fighting with us for the first time, CPI-ML, it's a communist party, Marxist-Leninist. They fought on 3 seats. They won 2. Congress was fighting with us. They won 3 seats. We won 4. We lost 3 seats within a margin of 8 to 10,000 votes. Chhapra, Shivhar. You know, based on the 2019 election, we were much below 20.5% vote. We have reached 40% of vote, which did not translate into the way we had desired in the election. So if you look at it, out of 40 seats, our coalition has won 10 seats. We knew the day I told in the opening remark, there is 8.5% vote with Nitish of JD. He was with us till 22nd of January, around January last week. But then he left. I have told you the reason. We could not make enough dent in that vote. And if you look at the election results, that vote mattered a lot. But we are working on it. And this was not the first or the last election. We have assembly election. And who knows, maybe as a nation, we are headed for midterm poll. That's on the whole, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one more question we will wind up. There's a question here. Don't you think we are gradually losing federalism, notwithstanding the election results and our constitution? I think the center is entering into a donor-donee relationship rather than a sharing relationship. Will it weaken federalism?
No, it has already weakened. I'll tell you, a large number of people are making complaints, even opposition parties, that Bihar and Andhra has got huge. Let me tell you, you just Twitter timeline of Tejaswi ji, our leader of opposition. 90% of these schemes were ongoing schemes. Ongoing schemes have been brought together. Highways, tourism sector, and interestingly, there are power plant. In one district, it was announced last year. Within 1 year, in the same district, close to that district, another power. The one which was announced earlier, nothing has happened. So is the case of airport. The announcements were made. No allocation have been made to those announcements. But new announcements have been made. That's why I said it is not even peanuts. It's simply shells. And in case of Andhra, we know it's a kind of loan which could be called a multilateral loan. But the language through which all these things are spoken, that's not the language of federalism. A prime minister is a prime minister. Constitutionally, he is first among equals. He is the leader of a party which is in power or a coalition. He is not a king. He is not a monarch. वो सौगात नहीं दे सकते. If you examine, ये सौगात की जुबान बहुत बोली जाती है. सौगात की बरसात हुई. I mean, that's anti-federal idea. Now, one more thing which I'll say and then close. If you examine the passage of the bill in last 5 years in particular, all the bills have severely impacted the idea of cooperative federalism. There has been over outreach in the domain of the state. And that outreach, I think that should worry everyone. Because as I said, India is a union of states. Emotionally speaking, it's a coalition of states, coalition of ideas, coalition of regions, coalition of dress, coalition of food, coalition of faith. There is a brazen attack on this idea of coalition by the government. I hope the new two coalition partners tell them to mend their ways. Thank you, sir.